Well, good afternoon and welcome to the CivEx Access to Justice in Arizona. My name is Dawn Wallace, and I am Vice President for Civic Leadership at the Arizona Center for Civic Leadership at the Flinn Foundation. Just a little bit about our center. We are a nonpartisan center that enhances civic life in Arizona through civic education, engagement, and leadership development. One of our signature programs is the Arizona Civic Exchange, CivEx for short, which delivers educational programming for the public to become better informed on Arizona policy and political topics. And we are a nonpartisan 501c3 tax-exempt charitable organization that is subject to federal, state, and local laws and regulations prohibiting political and other non-charitable activities such as campaign activities, electioneering, and lobbying. And with that, I would like to introduce our host for this CivEx webinar, the Honorable Janet Regner.
Thank you, Dawn. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I will be moderating today's CivEx, which will be recorded, and the recording will be put up on the website after we're finished here today. I am a Flinn-Brown Fellow, and I also am a member of the Arizona Access to Justice Commission. A lot of work that has gone into the Commission's work over the many years, and we're excited to share some of that knowledge here today with some very esteemed individuals. We will be entertaining questions and answers after the presentations, but I would like to start us off by introducing the Honorable Chief Justice Timmer, I apologize, Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court. Chief Justice.
Thank you, Janet. Thanks so much for the invitation to speak to this audience today. And thank you to all the attendees who are so interested in what's really a vital topic in our state and in our nation. Every year or every 5 years, a new Chief Justice is selected for the Arizona Supreme Court. I have been in this position for about 15 months. In the run-up to that, the new Chief Justice will always select goals and initiatives to be achieved during the next 5 years in a strategic agenda. My number one goal for the current strategic agenda, which is called Justice for All, is access to civil justice. It has by no means a unique goal. It has been the goal for the past 2 Chief Justices preceding me. And that's because it is so vital to all of us. Arizona is ranked 49th out of 50th in lawyers per capita. If you are fortunate enough to be able to have an attorney or access to one, they're expensive. We all know that. As a result, so many people try to go it alone to access our courts. It's meaningless in many respects if we say we have open doors to our courthouses, to our courtrooms, if people don't know what they're doing to understand our laws, to understand our rules, to navigate what could be a very frightening scenario on their own, be it in a family law matter, consumer debt, landlord-tenant, on and on. Our court has done what we can over the years to simplify and streamline measures. But at the end of the day, people need help. And part of what the court does is to help people in helping themselves. We've done a lot in Arizona along those lines. Those of you that are familiar with what goes on nationally, hopefully know that Arizona has actually been quite a leader in that effort. We have created new tiers of legal service providers to give people an opportunity to access the information they need to help themselves in our courts. We now only have document preparers to give you legal information in filling out forms. We have legal paraprofessionals. We have our latest thing is we have community justice workers who provide free legal advice as supervised by legal aid. These are people that are planted around our entire state, social workers, librarians, whomever, that can help just that little bit to give people assistance. Another thing that we are finding, which is problematic, is that lawyers are not wanting to go to rural areas as much. That probably is something that is shows up in other areas as well. Why does this matter? Not only does it matter on a human level as getting people access to our courts, but at the end of the day, if we don't have people having that type of meaningful access, they're going to lose the only thing that we have really, and that's our faith in our court system. As Alexander Hamilton once famously said, the executive branch has the sword, the legislative branch has the purse. The only thing the judicial branch has is the faith of the people. And if people don't feel like they're giving a meaningful shot in our courts, getting that fair shake, they lose that trust. We lose that faith, which is what we need to survive. At the end of the day, not to put too fine of a point on it, I think that without meaningful access to justice in our state and in our nation, the rule of law itself is put at risk, and so is democracy. So I think I'm coming up my 4 minutes and 14 seconds. I want to transition over to my colleagues, Judge Sam Thumma, Judge Anni Foster. Judge Thumma has for years led our Commission on Access to Justice, does tremendous work, and I'm so deeply appreciative. And that is my 4 minutes, and I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you, Chief Justice. We appreciate it. My name is Sam Thumma. I do chair Arizona's Commission on Access to Justice. And I have the privilege of working with many fabulous folks around the state, including Judge Foster, who's a colleague and also a member of the commission. The Arizona Commission on Access to Justice is a court-centric commission, but it's not internally focused by any means exclusively. Janet Regner is a founding member of the commission. The commission began in 2014, and she's been just an integral part of all the work that the commission does. We're an information exchange. We really try to constantly lean forward to improve and enhance access to justice. There are many continuing needs in Arizona. Our commission has accomplished, I think, some pretty great things, but there are many, many, many more needs that are unmet. I want to talk just a little bit about the focus, kind of the mission. We're here to increase and expand attorney engagement, but also here to support reform and expand resources. Anni will talk about that in a little bit, just some examples. To support and collaborate with the courts to enhance resources and funding for civil legal services, to work to improve legal information and access, to collaborate to increase access to legal information and services, and to support online legal resources. These days, a fair amount of the work that we do is either involving technology or technology adjacent, particularly given the number of remote court hearings that are being held in our state, given geographical, transportation, and other limitations. That's a terrific opportunity, but it also creates new issues, the digital divide, trying to green the legal deserts that we have that the Chief Justice mentioned. So it's a delight to be here. I'm so glad you're here for this conversation on access to justice in Arizona. And with that, let me turn to my colleague, Judge Anni Foster. Anni?
Thank you, Judge Thumma. Thank you all for being here on this important topic. I'll just touch a little bit on some of the work that the commission has been doing, and it kind of piggybacks on what Justice Timmer was talking about. You know, the courts have developed several innovative programs to really help get legal representation for those that can't just hire a lawyer. Those are the legal paraprofessionals. These are people that are not lawyers, but they take a test through the court system and can represent people on, you know, specific issues like family law, administrative law, limited jurisdiction civil cases, and limited jurisdiction criminal cases and juvenile cases. We have legal advocates. Again, these are not lawyers. They are usually associated with nonprofits, and specifically they help out on housing and domestic violence issues, and are overseen by an attorney. We have document preparers, as Justice Timmer mentioned. We also have the community justice workers who work with our legal service providers within the state, and they are really the ones that are connected to the communities. But the one that I wanted to highlight also that many people don't know much about is called the alternative business structures, which are law firms that are non-lawyer owned. Traditionally, in Arizona in the past, in many states, you have to be a lawyer to own a law firm. And the court developed this program several years ago. Justice Timmer was involved in that. And implementing this program, what we're attempting to do is introducing innovations through technology, through innovative partnerships. And we've seen some interesting things like veterans representing, working with nonprofits who can represent veterans to get benefits, and just other different innovations. And that's where, people that are involved in Flinn-Brown can really help, because you guys have those innovative minds. And so if you have ideas, it might be interested to hear from you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to County Attorney Ammon Barker. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Foster, Judge Thumma. It's a pleasure to be here. I saw the list of folks that were online and saw a lot of familiar faces and names, and happy to be here to represent kind of the rural perspective on this issue that we're talking about. I am the county attorney in Coconino County. Coconino County, as many people know, probably is the largest county in Arizona, the second largest in the United States. My office is about 55 individuals, 22 attorneys, and we prosecute felony offenses and misdemeanor offenses in Coconino County. We share jurisdiction with our federal partners on tribal lands. There are, in fact, 6 recognized tribal lands nations, at least parts of them, in Coconino County. And our county is over 18,000 square miles. It's an enormous county. And it has some issues because of that. I live in Flagstaff with my family. Most of the folks that I work with are in Flagstaff, but certainly this issue in the rural parts of Coconino County is folks are impacted by it. I spend a lot of my time traveling out into these communities in Coconino County that quite frankly, are dealing with issues related to electricity or running water. When I'm spending time on the Navajo Nation, for instance, that's often a conversation that we have out there. And so when I think about access to justice, I mean, that's a fundamental thing to make sure people have that. But for many of these folks, it's difficult to even find a ride to Flagstaff to participate in court or to meet with lawyers that live in Flagstaff. I wanted to highlight one thing that I'm working on with our Criminal Justice Coordinating Council in Coconino County. We have a group that meets together. It's the courts here, Superior Court, as well as our public defender, legal defender, and also our law enforcement partners. And one of the committees we've developed is called the Community Engagement Committee, because we've recognized that many people in rural Arizona feel left out in the process of obtaining justice. And so we created an initiative called the Justice Bus, which is not an actual bus, it's symbolic, I suppose. But the idea behind this was to get out in the community, bring the court services out to community members that didn't have access to court services. Even as we've heard others talk about, remote appearances and virtual appearances in court. Sometimes that's not even available to folks because Wi-Fi is just not available in some of these locations. And so we've brought out our court and our court partners out to these remote areas. Recently, we were up in Tuba City in the Navajo Nation and providing some services out there. There were 55 individuals that appeared and were able to resolve not just criminal issues, but other issues related to name changes and marriage licenses. In fact, we had 4 weddings while we were up there. I was able to participate as a witness in a couple of those weddings. What we found in developing that is that there were so many other services that were needed out there. And so that became an anchor for a lot of the things we're talking about. And we partnered with DNA Legal Services as well that provides legal aid to folks out there. So as we think about in the rural context, everything is a little bit harder, I think, when we're talking about access to justice. You heard Chief Justice Timmer talk about Arizona being 49th in per capita, lawyers per capita. That's even more exaggerated, I think, in the rural context. And so we've had to be creative, and I think we found some ways to connect with individuals that need access to justice. But we're certainly hoping to do more in northern Arizona. I think that's my 4 minutes. I'm going to turn it over now to our two senators that are here, Senator Shawnna Bolick and Senator Analise Ortiz.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us to speak to you all today. My name is Shawnna Bolick. I'm the state senator for District 2, which is North Phoenix. I have served in the legislature since about 2018, served in the House and now serving in the Senate, my second term. I have spent a fair amount of time here at the Capitol on criminal justice reform. I've had a chance to tour many prisons, reentry programs, and yesterday I happened to shadow a Maricopa County Justice of the Peace in my district to kind of see some of the resources and cases that come before them in order to get a better understanding when I'm crafting legislation or voting for legislation, how it might impact even our justice courts. I had a chance to sit there for a few hours and hear about someone who was almost evicted. Two people came in who were asking for orders of protection, which I have worked on legislatively over the years. And another person came in, I guess there was a warrant out for their arrest and they finally showed up. So it was definitely an interesting experience to show up and support one of our JPs. I've also done ride-alongs with adult probation here in Maricopa County in my district. And also work with different nonprofits, including making sure that legal services aid got continuation of funding this past session. Worked with Senator Ortiz on that, even though she didn't vote for the budget. I did work with her on that issue. See a smile from you. So when I was at the court yesterday, obviously I've seen different levels of the courts around the state. I've had a chance to visit even Yuma and obviously the Arizona Supreme Court over the years. But it was very interesting to see the JP reach out to everybody that came forward and literally hand them a packet of information saying, hey, these are resources to 211. Hey, this is a way for you to potentially get free legal representation. And obviously, as a state senator, I have a chance to vote on budgets and craft legislation that will impact our court system to the access of justice. Having the power of the purse is good and bad at times. I think this next legislative session, we're going to be dealing with the aftermath of whatever the feds are not funding, and that will impact some of these programs. So I just want to turn that over to Senator Ortiz now too.
Thank you, Senator. Hi, everyone. I'm really honored to be here today. I'm Senator Analise Ortiz. I have the tremendous privilege of serving the people of Maryvale in West Phoenix and South Glendale in Legislative District 24. Before I ran for the legislature, I served in the legislature for 3 years. Prior to that, I led legislative advocacy efforts at the ACLU of Arizona around criminal justice reform. And since being elected, I have led efforts around eviction prevention and protecting tenants' rights. Was very proud to work with Senator Bolick on securing that money in the state budget for legal aid this year. But we do have so much further to go when it comes to the many changes that need to happen. My district here on the west side is home to some of the zip codes with the highest eviction rates in all of Maricopa County. So this is an issue that is very near and dear to my heart and very real for my constituents here who are living with the impacts of unequal access to justice. So I appreciate the opportunity to brainstorm with all of the thought leaders on this call of how we can work collectively at all levels of government to make a difference for people in the community.
Well, thank you, everyone. You guys are quick talkers. So we are moving right along, and we're going to be having some questions coming in from our participants out around Arizona. But while we're waiting for those questions to emerge, I thought I would just ask one question to get us started. County Attorney Barker focused very well on the unique challenges in rural Coconino County. And Senator Bolick also referred to some of the challenges in rural Arizona. I'm wondering if any of the other panelists would like to have some input or some comments about the challenges of providing legal services in rural Arizona.
Janet, if you don't mind, and this is sort of adjacent to providing legal services in rural Arizona. But, you know, Arizona doesn't have a unified court system, so it pushes autonomy to many local courts. And we tend to think, or it's easy to think, gosh, Maricopa County Superior Court's fourth largest trial court in the country, 160 judicial officers. That's kind of the driver of the bus on innovation. It couldn't be further from the truth. Maricopa County does amazing things, do not get me wrong, and they will continue to do that always. But I'm mindful when COVID hit, which forced us to really look at technology, remote court hearings, Mojave County, way up in the far northwest corner, you know, there's a town, Colorado City, 5,000 people in Mojave County, that to get to the nearest Superior Court courthouse, you need to drive through 2 other states about 4.5 hours one way. That's a huge access to justice problem. And so during COVID, remote appearances were allowed. You could first appear by phone and then Zoom or Teams, whatever platform they were using. And for brief court hearings, not probably for a jury trial, although they did a lot of things during the pandemic for fact finding. But why shouldn't you be able to appear remotely as opposed to take a day or more off for what might be a very short hearing? So it's that necessity, it's that hunger for innovation that, you know, you can find everywhere. And in Arizona, again, plenty of work to do not get me wrong, but the court leadership, Chief Justice Timmer and her colleagues and the administrative office of the courts have really done creative, innovative things, which means we need to be strong enough to fail, right? Sometimes things don't work, but we're trying things that in other states, you know, they just wouldn't be sort of brave, or in my instance, foolhardy enough to try these new innovations. And I'm so impressed by what local communities are doing, because they have to. And then if we can, you know, build on that innovation, and also along the way, you know, help them with support in a variety of different ways, that's the rich stew, I think, of legal innovation and regulatory reform in Arizona. And it I think is the Western state mentality, and also leadership in all 3 branches to help us try to do better.
Thank you, Judge Thumma. Comments from others? Judge Foster.
Janet, I would just piggyback on what Judge Thumma was talking about, and actually something he's talked about a lot at our commission meetings and has been championing is the community justice workers. I mean, what that program is sort of modeled off of is Alaska, and what kind of other state is, you know, has more rural issues than Arizona does. Alaska does. A lot of those places you can only get there if you fly. And that model started there, where you could, you know, go to, say, you know, a medical center maybe, and there's a social worker there who actually can help with some of the legal issues, and they have some training on that. And so I do think that's the future of, you know, how we address some of these things in the rural areas, in addition to the remote access that would definitely be helpful. You know, trying to connect people in their communities to people in their communities that are knowledgeable about the processes, about the system. I think that's going to help a lot.
Thank you. Chief Justice.
I just raised my hand. Yeah, just to piggyback on a couple points on the rural areas. I think that if we had a motto for Sam and Anni's commission, it has to be needs must. I mean, that really is Arizona, that we have a need and we must do something about it, and we really don't really have any resources to do much with. One of the I go to different meetings all over the country, and I was struck by one talking about this issue, hearing that New York's Commission on Access to Justice has an $80 million budget. $80 million. The budget we have is a big, you know, zero. But I thought, you know, we could get some money for them, hopefully. And our AOC director, Dave Byers, is great about finding money. Let's give them some money, not to do anything in the commission internally, but to ferry it out to people around the state who have those great ideas. As Sam was saying, we really are a bottom-up organization in our state, in terms of people encouraged to you have a problem, you know your niche area, you think of a solution, well, pitch it to someone. Let's see if we can do it. So that commission can hand out some monies to do pilot projects to see, let's get some evidence. Does this work? Does this not? Hopefully then get funding sources to say if it does work, let's continue to fund it. And an example would be in Northern Arizona, and Ammon, is it Coconino or Mojave? I'm sorry, I'm losing track. That one of their things I was taken with, they're having, I think they call it a justice pod, which to me is like Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure in one of those phone booths that you just go in the middle of nowhere and you can dial up to get that kind of link to the court that you're talking about. But that's an example. People are very innovative all over our state, and this commission is helping them with just a little bit of money and a little bit of probably a lot of encouragement, which I think is great. And just quickly, we're also having a lot of inducements to get lawyers, young lawyers in particular, to want to go out in rural Arizona. So our state bar, we asked if they could put up some money, and they did kindly, to fund, I think, 10 different law students over the summer, so $50,000 to give them stipends to go out in the rural areas and practice and see what life is like. So I think that if I could just get them to have a dating service out there, that would really shore it up. But we do our best to encourage folks, and we've done some other things too with to get licensed attorneys, inducements to be out in those areas. So we're trying.
Thank you.
And if I could touch base on what Chief Justice just said, because Chief Justice, you're right. The pods it's a Coconino County initiative. We have 2 pods that we've identified through some research and data mining to determine kind of where the locations would be most efficient for folks, because the Wi-Fi just isn't available in a lot of these places. You know, they can't stay at home and do these remote court appearances. And so one will be in the Botaway Gap area on the Navajo Nation. The other one will be in Tuba City area, Navajo Nation. And it is just like a phone booth. And people can get in there and they zoom into the court. They have a pin to access it. And yeah, we're going to try it. We'll see. They're not established quite yet, but this was a partnership my office had with our Health and Human Services Department through their epidemiologists, some of the research they've done there. So yeah, I think innovation kind of comes from from necessity, right? As you mentioned. And if I could just pitch to the group, we would love to have a law school up in NAU. Let's bring a law school to NAU. Let's get some law students up here as well. We've had a lot of law students. Chief Justice, you mentioned this program. We had some law students in our office recently. And I think they fall in love with the place, but you know, there's a lot of challenges to living up in this area as well. Thanks for highlighting that.
And we are talking to, might happen, NAU Law School.
Let's do it.
Well, thank you. And I want to go back to something that Chief Justice Timmer mentioned about the difference between certain states and, for example, the state budget that New York State has versus us. And I don't want it to get past us that we have 2 state senators right here in our midst, who provided a lot of leadership this past legislative session to move that needle a bit. And I'm wondering if Senator Bolick and/or Senator Ortiz would like to talk about that a minute.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about it for about a minute. Ortiz can have it for maybe half the time. So it was something new that obviously was brought to us because we were unaware of the program that was being funded at the federal level. Obviously, we've heard of different organizations here in Arizona. It's funny, I actually was able to find something that I received earlier this session, and this was sent by none other than Samuel Thumma. So I still keep the resources in order to give them to my constituents and so forth. So obviously we had some folks come over from the court to talk to our legislators about these programs and the need to continue funding them. We had a handful of people that showed up for that presentation and to do Q&A with the Chief Justice, and none other than someone that shares the same last name as me. He tagged along with her that day. And some other folks, but they were able to answer questions about what the purpose is and how much money they needed. I know there was talk about potentially doing some private funding as well. But it was basically a joint effort. There were Democrats and Republicans in the room learning about the resources that are available. It was great, like yesterday, it was great to actually see the JP of Moon Valley literally hand someone a packet of information that included phone numbers to hopefully get some free legal assistance.
Yes, I was really proud to be part of that effort. Thank you, Senator Bolick, for helping with your caucus in terms of getting that bipartisan support. That was really crucial to move this funding across the finish line. I originally had introduced a bill in the beginning of the session with a $10 million appropriation for civil legal aid, and wasn't able to get that across the finish line, but the ultimate dollar amount we landed on was, I believe, $3 million. So as anyone who's worked on legislative advocacy might know, everything is a negotiation and a compromise, and you ask for more than what you ultimately are going to get when we're talking about the state budget. But I really want to emphasize the importance of that money, because Arizona is one of only 3 states that does not have a regular allocation for civil legal aid coming from the state general fund. And our civil legal aid organizations are so crucial. In 2024, they were able to help Arizonans keep $11.5 million in their pocket that otherwise would have been wrongfully or unlawfully taken from them. And in some of these cases, we're talking about impacts that really can't even be measured through numbers. Things like people being able to stay in their home because they were able to access an attorney to protect them from an unjust eviction. And so those are the things that really have an impact that money can't really calculate. And we also have to remember that the need for change here goes beyond just the money as well. We do need some of that policy change. There was a bill a couple of years back that was introduced by a Republican. It did have bipartisan support, but unfortunately, we were not able to get it passed. But what it would have done is required those phone numbers, those civil legal aid phone numbers and other resources on the eviction notice itself. And so hopefully we'll be able to keep having those policy conversations as well about how we can expand justice and make these crucial life-saving resources more readily available to our community.
Thank you again to both of you, Senator Ortiz and Senator Bolick, for your leadership on this. It was groundbreaking, and it's very, very much appreciated. I'd like to move on to a question we have from our participants, and this person is a Flinn-Brown fellow. And the question is, has there been an effort to provide specialty courts in all 15 counties, such as restitution court, drug court, mental health court, etc.? And I'll throw it out to whoever would like to take that on.
Forgive me, I was multitasking when that question came in. There is a self-service center site on that. If you type in Arizona specialty courts, you'll come to it, and it links to, there appear to be at least 11 counties with specialty courts in Arizona right now of various kinds: drug court, DUI court. I'm just reading now with another screen: homeless court, veterans treatment court, which along with drug court was one of the early sort of specialty courts, domestic violence courts, animal welfare court, and that's described for a problem-solving court to provide treatment for defendants accused of more serious misdemeanor offenses involving animals. Mental health court, unique population with services from a variety of different perspectives. And then the broadest, I think, is community court, assisting and connecting community members with services that can address their needs, help them move out of the criminal justice system and become more productive members of the of society again. So a big effort in Arizona, again, as the Chief Justice mentioned, ground up to build treatment courts and specialty courts to help people do better. As a judicial officer, I'd be pretty happy if people never came to my court. They didn't need my services, and I think the specialty courts are really working hard to try to do just that.
Yeah, and I can add to that. I think Sam mentioned that. I think reeled off, I think virtually every specialty court I can think of, and others that are severely mentally ill, plus being unhoused. I think in Pima County, they have that one, but that's about the only one I think of. Whereas restitution courts, not all counties have restitution courts. I know Yuma County does. I know Maricopa has, I think, tried. Maybe Ammon can tell us if Coconino does. It is something I think is very valuable. And one of the things that it's in my strategic agenda that I've asked that and have brought it up to all the presiding judges in all 15 counties to consider implementing. One of my newest colleague, Justice Mary Elena Cruz, before she came on the court, would volunteer to go back to Yuma and run restitution court. So she has personally picked up this issue and has said that she will do any training, anything anybody needs to sell the success of that program. So I am very hopeful that restitution court will spread to all of the counties to not only get restitution for crime victims, but also then put defendants back on their feet and back onto a pathway forward in their lives.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Well, we have another question that's come in. An important issue impacting court access and productivity is having staff to support court processes, such as judicial assistants and court reporters, which there is a shortage of. How can we encourage more individuals to pursue a career in these areas? Also, the certification for court reporters seems to be a challenge. So who would like to take that one on?
I can take a stab at it, Janet. And looks like it's a question from Steve Peru, who I know well. And that's a great question. I think we have to be honest about the improvements in technology that we've seen as well when we think about answering this question. A lot of court, I was just in court earlier today and watched a hearing, and it was all digital recording. So some of this, I think, is being used in lieu of court reporters. Certainly, I believe court reporters are essential in a lot of cases and hearings. We do grand jury in our office, right? And we want to make sure that the record is clear, but these will be challenges. And I think we have to embrace some of the tools of technology as we move forward, just like we were talking about remote appearances. These are innovations that have helped us to be more efficient in getting these services out. So it could be that there's a shift in where we're asking people to work. It may not be the court reporters that are going to be doing this in the future. It may be something or a hybrid of those things. But that's the first thing that came to mind when I read that question, was how the technology innovations have changed a lot of what it looks like from the traditional model.
We looked at, I chaired a task force in 2019, which turned out to be fortuitous and helpful as the pandemic hit, on this exact topic. What changes in the law and in the rules and regulations would need to be put in place to allow for the record to be made through electronic means, the court record, with the exception of grand juries. We left grand juries alone, although Alaska's had remote grand juries for decades and seem to have been able to do it for reasons that Judge Foster mentioned for travel. And the driver there were some court reporter positions in certain counties that had been unfilled for years. One was reported as being posted and unfilled for a decade. Well, the court process needs to continue to move forward somehow. When somebody's taken into custody, they have a right to see a judicial officer very quickly. And simply because there's a court reporter opening or shortage or deficiency doesn't mean that individual should stay in custody any longer than the law should properly allow. So it's a problem. Court reporting is a tough job. I have enormous respect for court reporters. I also believe that there's technology use that can allow and facilitate the reach of court reporters so that people aren't in custody longer than they should be, and the court's process should move forward. So an integral part of what the court system does, but a limitation in Arizona in a variety of different ways.
Thank you, Judge Thumma. So we have another question that kind of takes us back a bit to outlying areas, but I know it also impacts Maricopa and Pima counties as well. Have there been any issues with remote court hearings? For example, poor signal, others appearing, delays, etc. And how have those challenges been overcome?
There have. And the reason why I know there have is not just anecdotal, but we surveyed the bench. We surveyed the bench in 2021 when we went to use technology for a ton of hearings because of the pandemic. When that remained in place, we did that same or a very similar survey in 2023. And I, with my right eye, am looking at some charts for a survey that were repeated in 2025 with the leadership of the Administrative Office of the Courts. That just came in maybe a month ago. And to look just a couple of slides to try to relate to them. How often do you have technology disruptions during court proceedings using a technology-based platform? And it ranges from frequently, maybe 20%, to occasionally about 50%, and rarely about 30%. Pretty stable numbers in all three of those surveys, 2021, 23, and 25. How long then, the follow-up, does it take to fix technical difficulties during court proceedings? About a third, say a minute or two with no significant delay. About half, and it's actually increasing over the years, which is not a good sign, several minutes, but the proceeding resumes. And then about 5%, a significant amount of time, often requiring the matter to be reset on another day. So the thing with that is technology is not perfect, for sure, 100%. I completely agree. It creates issues like the digital divide. The branch is looking at whether those issues are growing or abating, how we can do better. And the information I just described will be provided in an Arizona Attorney article in either December or January. The leadership in Arizona's courts, not me, I'm the beneficiary of it, but are willing to survey and then report out how that information looks. It's not very many judicial, sort of jurisdictions that would facilitate that, but we need to keep an eye on how to do better.
Thank you, Judge Thumma. Anyone else? All right.
Janet.
Well, yes, sure. Go ahead.
My computer's slow, so I don't know if you can totally hear me, but
Oh, I can hear.
great. I just want to add that yes, there is lots to be done in our state, but I also want to say that when the pandemic hit, Arizona was one of the few states that actually kept their courts up and running. I mean, I've heard from other states that their courts basically just shut down. So there is a lot of work still to be done, but I do want to make sure that people on that are listening today do understand that with that, big goose egg that Justice Timmer was talking about, there is a lot that's been done here in Arizona, and there is a big commitment. And we are sort of the model that a lot of people across the nation are looking at as to what we're doing on access to justice. But boy, if we did have a little more funding, what could we do from that perspective, especially in those rural areas?
Judge Foster, a follow-up to that is, what do you attribute that kind of let's just do it attitude?
Well, number one, I would say it's Arizonans, right? I think Arizonans are that sort of just get it done and find a way. When you live in the desert, you really just sort of have to find a way to make it work. And we have a lot of rural areas in our state. And as was mentioned before, when you live hours away from any kind of help that's coming to get you, you have to figure it out on your own. So I think that's a strong mentality that runs throughout all of Arizona. And I think everybody does have a commitment, number one, to make sure that people get their day in court, make sure that justice is served. And I think that's the undercurrent that runs through all of this and the discussions that we see. And I would just add, we haven't really even talked about it, but the Arizona Bar Foundation is an integral partner into everything that's done on access to justice issues in Arizona. And for those that don't know much about that, it's sort of an arm. It's its own separate foundation, but it gets money from interest that accrues on lawyer sort of accounts. And from that money, it uses it to set up websites like AZ Court Help. If you haven't seen that website, you really should go look at it. AZ Law Help is another one. They all provide sort of resources for self-represented litigants who are trying to figure these things out. There are videos on those websites where you can go and look, say you've been served with an action in family law court or juvenile court, and there's a video that will show you these are the things that you need to consider. This is the timeline that you need to consider. And if it weren't for the folks, Kevin Ruig and Chris Groninger, who are over there at the Bar Foundation, just to name two, the work that they're doing to innovate and provide these resources is just amazing.
You're here, definitely. And I would just add, having been a part of I know I'm the moderator, but I just want to make a comment here about, and to Arizona's horn again, but when you think about it, the states that really have led the charge in terms of access to justice are very rural states. Arizona, Utah, and Alaska. It doesn't get any more rural than that. And we keep bringing up Alaska, but when you think about the terrain and what it takes to get from place to place in a state like Alaska, and then you think about Arizona and what we've been able to do. So again, it's like climbing this massive mountain to make this work. And I'm kind of surprised, I guess, and maybe Judge Thumma and Judge Timmer can comment on this, as well as you, Judge Foster, is what do other states say when they think of the progress that those three states have made being sort of in the Wild West?
And I defer to the chief, but it depends. I mean, Arizona has some uniqueness. We've talked about some of it. We don't have an unauthorized practice of law statute that went away in 1986. And that allows us to innovate in a way that some other states believe they're prohibited by it. And I'm not sure I agree with that, but at least that's what you hear. And we get together with Access to Justice Commission chairs and share information. Some also you hear, oh, we need more money. Well, I'm delighted. Do not get me wrong, senators. I'm delighted that for the first time in the history of our great state, we have legislative budget for legal services. That's a big deal. But we need to continue to try to innovate in ways that doesn't involve, a lot of numbers on a check or on a budget line item. And I think that's the thing that I've been so impressed with local courts. They'll just see a need, some smart people will figure out a fix that may or may not be perfect, may or may not work, but try it and move forward with that. Because if the answer is we can't do anything until we have a lot more money, there's going to be a big long pause in that. And I like the spirit of Arizona's sort of access to justice champions. Let's go do some stuff and fix some things. And if we can get some money along the way, that's even better. But we're not going to just sit on the sidelines and wait for that.
I agree with that entirely. And I've been asked that question by other chief justices around the nation. And one in particular, the last time I think we met, 'cause we meet twice a year, from a very wealthy and large state back east, and said, why are all the innovations coming out of Arizona? I was like, after year, actually really decade after decade, we were the first to have self-help centers. We were the first to allow jurors notebooks, first to allow juror questions, on and on. And so way predeceasing all of us on the line, nothing to do with us. I do think that a culture kind of comes around that, some culture, some pride, some confidence that things can change with no resources, but it just innovation and people thinking imaginatively. And that is frankly something that we try to continue to encourage, because, we're government. They're not getting paid a lot. A lot of these people can get paid a lot more in the private sector. And of course we know that, but we want people to engage in the thought that this is a higher calling. You can really do a lot of good for your community. You can get that gratification, and then you can move up and continue to be a part really of a profession throughout your career. And we've been extraordinarily lucky on that. And you can get people to do that. I'll give you just a super quick example. This summer, I think we made some kind of remarks like that last year, and a justice of the peace in Nogales said, I'm so inspired that he just organized, wanted to have their self-help centers forms, fillable forms. So he got the local high school to get together and all these young kids for their community coding all of this. So it was so amazing. I had to go down there and see, how are you guys doing this? They're so smart. And they've done it. And they're a lot of them now want to be lawyers, or at least be involved in the legal system, the court system. And of course I asked, but you want to stay in Nogales, right? Yes, we want to be in Nogales. That's how we're going to grow these kinds of things. And so it really is unique, and it's really an asset to our entire state. We're very lucky people we have.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I think we have time for one more, and this one is a comment and a question. And I'm going to add a little bit to it. Most people learn about the justice system by experience, usually when they are navigating difficult legal problems. This panel, individually and collectively, have led efforts to better educate the public about the law. And I would add to this that one of the first sort of aha moments I had with the commission was, whoever plans to end up in a courtroom? I mean, you plan to buy a house, you plan to maybe get married, you plan vacations, you plan your children's education fund. You know, we have those kinds of plans in our lives, but nobody ever plans to end up in court. And when you do, it's a shock because you don't necessarily know how to navigate it. And I think Judge Foster put it really well about the great work that the Bar Foundation has done in terms of providing that kind of information and sort of being able to navigate through it. But the question is, what are the most promising ways that you all have found to be effective in terms of better educating the public about the judiciary?
You know, if I can just quickly say that the best way is the interaction with the court system, really through traditionally it's been through jurors. Unfortunately, we don't have as many jury trials. I think we're down to just maybe 1.5% of cases in all cases, all court levels, and then the entire state now go to jury trials. So it's not that many, but whenever anybody goes and serves on a jury, they see the process, they come away, and we know this from, of course, we survey them, that with a positive, this is a good, fair system, and they're very pleased. So the challenge is, how do we get people, if they don't do jury service, to sit down and listen to people like me lecture them on what a great system we have. Something we think of a lot.
I think to meet people where they are is awfully important. And that's hard, Janet. What you ask and what this question asks is there's not one big thing that we could sort of bring everybody to the Super Bowl and do an educational video. That's not going to happen. And so it's a lot of smaller things. But to try to get into the communities that we serve, the reference to Senator Bolick that you had to the Justice of the Peace providing information to someone who showed up in his or her courtroom, to take little things. And I was so delighted actually to hear that that letter made its way to you and may have had some help. We try to send those just so people know about resources in their communities. Again, Bar Foundation adjacent, they have created, and the courts as well, extraordinary web-based information sites. And I'm just looking at our annual report, nearly 2 million people being helped by accessing online legal resources above and beyond the representations by legal service providers for those most in need. That was just in 2024. Now, that's a passive way to get information. It's not pushing information to people. We try to get bench cards to judges. So if somebody comes and says, oh, I don't know where to go, you at least have some information to share with those individuals. But it's a 24/7 effort. with a lot of what you might call little things that add up to a bunch more. One final example, up Coconino Way, there's a terrific law librarian named Gretchen Hornberger, who has done just miracles with training and education to try to help those who don't have lawyers on legal information and where they can go for different kinds of hearings, how things work. I mean, what a gift, what a gift. But it's, in my mind, it's a lot of things that people might call little. I don't think they're little, but that add up collectively.
Thank you,
I
Judge.
would add from
Senator
the
Ortiz, you get the last word.
Okay, I would add from the community organizing perspective, is that I have had success with organizing court observation in 2 different campaigns. One was related to cash bail, the other, not necessarily a campaign, but related to what's currently happening with immigration, and bringing everyday community members down to the court, which are public spaces, to observe what's happening. And in both of those experiences, I found that community members are so hungry for information about how the courts work and how they can learn all they can by observing the process to then take that home and empower their community. And with the community legal advocate program that the Supreme Court has set up, that is an amazing opportunity for everyday people who might not be an attorney or a legislator to be able to get involved with the process to make a real impact for their neighbors. So tapping into those community organizations that are on the ground already, asking people, you know, what they need on a day-to-day basis, and helping them understand that access to the courts is one key way we can provide mutual aid for one another in challenging times. And, you know, as a legislator, I also organized a trip for our Democratic caucus to go observe eviction court in Pima County. They are doing some incredible innovative stuff there that was also, you know, kind of born out of a necessity during the pandemic. And that was also very eye-opening for my fellow legislators. So I would say there is nothing that is more motivating than seeing these things with your eyes firsthand, hearing the voices of people who are struggling through these court cases, and having that be the motivation to get people more energized to get involved in any way that they can.
Thank you so much, Senator Ortiz, and thank you to everyone for giving us your time today and your wisdom. I'm very grateful for this conversation. I hope our participants are as well. There's a couple questions we weren't able to get to, but we will try to get back to you with some answers. And I'm going to ask Dawn to join us so we can begin to wrap things up here. Miss Dawn.
Thank you. Well, on behalf of the Arizona Center for Civic Leadership, we want to thank all of you for joining us today and helping to inform the public on key issues that impact them and the communities in which they live and they work, and all of the rest of that. We are so grateful to Chief Justice for joining us today, and Judges Thumma and Foster, certainly our legislators, Senator Bolick and Senator Ortiz. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that we have 2 people who are across the aisle from each other, but who feel like this is an issue worth working on. And it's fundamental tenet of the work that we do here at the center with our Flinn-Brown program is to bring multiple perspectives together for the betterment of Arizona. And finally, my great thanks to our county attorney, Barker from Coconino, one of our most favorite counties in Arizona, certainly in the summertime. We all like to come up there. But this has just been a superstar panel of amazing leaders, civic leaders in the state, and we couldn't be more grateful to have you as part of the Flinn Foundation family. Thank you to Janet Regner, our Flinn-Brown Fellow, and all of the audience members who have stayed with us throughout this hour. Thank you, and please join us again for our next CivEx.
Thank you.